Sastra coach.
Well, Revit, thank you so much for being here with me today. So I guess the first question that I have for you, it's what did you want to be at 18?
It's a good question. So I changed my mind quite a few times. And like most 18-year-old, had no idea like what the future held and what even my options were. Actually, I really regret not having the opportunity to have access to this kind of content when I was in high school and trying to figure out my path, because truly there were like what I believed were there were like only a couple options that I knew about, right? It's like you can go into law, you could be a doctor, you could be an architect, but they're like the spectrum of jobs is so broad, and I didn't have any way to really like navigate that as a young adult. So at 18, I thought that I wanted to be a lawyer. Because I did debate. I did Model United Nations and whatever when I was in high school. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed public speaking and debating. And everyone told me that I would be a good lawyer. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go on that path. I studied global studies, and I had intentions to go to law school. I even took a year off after I graduated from UC Santa Barbara to just dedicate studying to the LSAT, which is the entrance exam for law school. So I was very committed to that path before I found another route, which I can learn later if you want. But yeah. I was very committed to law. I surprise, didn't end up going to law school or becoming a lawyer.
Okay, so now I guess the next question is, what was your very first paid job?
So my very first paying job was at a really like bougie cafe in Newport Beach. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. Newport Beach is just the next town over. But yeah, I worked at a fancy cafe called C'est Si Bon. It was brutal. I don't know, when you have your first job, you really want to perform and do your best. And so I just remember like the line being out the door and, getting there at 6:30 in the morning to make coffees, like really beautiful, it was a really nice coffee. And I'll never forget one day I was, I was really committed to making the best coffee ever and getting people their coffee quickly. And I spilt like scalding hot boiling water on my hand and like was crying. I really needed to address but I was so committed to help it, like to getting the customers their coffee. And I wouldn't advise that on anyone. And I'm like, why did I do that? Yeah, that was my first job, preparing coffees and burning myself.
Oh my gosh. And how did you end up in recruitment?
Okay, so like I mentioned, I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was like the path that I was committed to. And I worked in the public defender's office, I was ready to start on this path. And what some of you guys might not know is that law school is very, very, very expensive. And I was just, you kind of get in this rat race. So I graduated, I took the year off to study for the entrance exam. I was like, you know what, this is going to be like a lifelong commitment for me. I want to take a little bit more time off before I jump into this career path. So I moved to Spain. And while I was there, I met my now husband. So I moved to Spain to teach English for a year. It was like a gap year, it was a contract that was a clear start and end for me to do before going to law school. So I met my husband, and he like helped think critically, is this what you really want? Or are you just like on this path that you started a while ago? Is this really what you want? And so I started to really question it. And then, at the end, I decided that it probably wasn't truly my passion. So I withdrew because I was already planning I got into law school, going to San Francisco to start law school before the gap year. During this gap year, everything was like squared away. And now my husband, his name is Jordy, was like, he's a designer. So it's like, why don't you come with me to San Francisco? We can figure it out. I was like, I had these doubts about law school, but let's just do it. So withdrew from law school while I was in Spain. I decided I withdrew from everything. But we still moved to San Francisco because I love the city, and that was my plan. So we moved to San Francisco, and he was looking for design opportunity. And then I came across this company called the Creative Group. That's a staffing agency. So the Creative Group is part of Robert Half, which is a global staffing agency. So I heard about the Creative Group through my husband's job search. And I had a friend who was working there. And I reached out to her, and she told me a little bit more about what they do and how they could help Jordy find a position. I was like, wow, that sounds really cool, what she was describing. So she was an account manager at the staffing agency, and I like anyone in recruiting before. And I was like, wow, that sounds super interesting. I want to learn more. And she referred me in, and I ended up also joining the creative group as an account manager. Loved it. And that was the start of my career, my road down recruitment and HR, which I did for 10 years after that.
What an interesting story is. I guess like what you're saying is your husband played a key role in this decision making. It's like helping you like explore options and just thinking a bit outside the box, but also like that contact, right? Referrals, people that you met through, the journey. And that's great. And so after the creative group, I know you were there for some years, right?
Yeah, I was there for almost 8 years.
Okay. And then after that came Meta. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, Meta. Interesting to hear like how hard it was for you to land a job at Meta, and how was your experience like?
So Meta is a really competitive company to join. They decline like 90% of like people who are going through the interview process. Most people who join that company, it's not their first time interviewing. Actually, they usually get it on their second or sometimes third. Experience of interviewing at various points in time. So it's a tough company to get into. One of my ex-coworkers referred me, and as everyone knows, is truly the best way to get eyes on your resume. It won't ever guarantee a role, or a job opportunity, but it will often increase the likelihood that you will get eyes on your resume, because so often people are just, declined from roles because of, recruiting tools aren't finding the keywords or whatever it might be. But you might be one of, many thousands of people you're often one of many thousands of people who are interviewing. And there just isn't any way for a single human or group of humans to review so many applicants for a role. So the tools can sometimes be to blame. Or, you just got the wrong set of eyes on your resume and people aren't seeing the potential there. And so referrals can often give that extra context of why someone is a good fit for a role, something that can't always be conveyed on paper.
Like, what do people still get wrong about recruitment?
So I think recruitment in general tends to have like a bad rap because I don't know, truly, there are a lot of bad recruiters out there. And like, it's really unfortunate that they, that's the truth. I think people tend to feel that recruiters are not experts in their domain that they're hiring, or that, they're just kind of the first filter and they don't really know, or they don't have attention to detail or whatever it might be. That wasn't my experience working at Meta or the creative group. When I was at Meta, it was truly like the best. That was one of the reasons why I joined, was to really learn from the best of the best. And I did learn a lot there. It was a very humbling experience. Yeah, I would say a lot of people just unfortunately feel that recruiters don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
When it comes to hiring, or they're sometimes blamed for, being declined from a role. If you're a candidate, try to treat your recruiters with respect, because at the end, like they want to fill the role, and they're going to be your advocate throughout the process, advocating for your candidacy, and then later potentially a really competitive package. You want to form alliances with recruiters.
I couldn't agree more with that. Saying that you learn from the best. You had a lot of obviously great professionals around you in your career. So what's the single best career advice that you've been given, and by whom?
That's a tough one. One of the pieces of advice that really stuck with me, it's more of like financial advice than career advice actually. But at the creative group, our compensation there was really it was tied to bonuses and performance and all of that. And the longer that you're there, like you can really earn a lot on the agency side. And someone told me like early on in my career just to, it was tough in the beginning to build your book of business and to make like a really good like living wage. And so it's sort of like austerity in the beginning, just being careful about with your spending. And then the advice was to keep that mentality even when you're doing well and earning a lot of money. And I really appreciate that. So that really stuck with me, to just sort of, don't get in over your head if you're doing well and like financially in your job, just to be save or invest, because some people who are experiencing money are new. If you're just starting out your career and this is like your first job and you're making really good money, it's easy to get out of hand and just like buy a bunch of things that you don't need, or like a fancy car, or a home that's out of your budget. Just to be really careful about your spending. Other advice is just, make sure to always protect your network, and that's really going to be, it's often very closely tied with the professional opportunities that you will have currently and also later on. The people in your network now might switch roles and join a company that you really want to join in the future. So to be really mindful of that and nurture your relationships, your professional relationships, and also your personal relationships too. Just to be mindful of, the ecosystem and try to treat those relationships with a lot of respect.
Yeah, totally. I do speak a lot about networking with the clients that I support. In this very messy job market, you really need to rely on your network. It's quite tough for people. What I'm finding a lot, Rebecca, is that a lot of my clients are struggling to like build those relationships on LinkedIn. Like they're getting ghosted a lot. People are not responding. I guess the next question that I have for you is around any advice you have, especially for designers. I mean, I know you worked mostly with product designers during your time at Meta. So what advice would you give to all of those UI, UX product designers out there who are facing a really hard market? And also like, not only the advice, also like what kind of qualities do you think they should be working on?
Yeah. Okay. So the market is moving. The way that designers are defined right now in the market is just, it's not really a fixed thing, and it's changing really, really fast. I know it's a source of anxiety for not only designers, but across basically every industry. Like I think everyone is sort of facing this a little bit of a existential crisis or identity crisis, and not knowing sort of how to prepare yourself for the direction that your specific industry is heading. I can tell you at Meta, when I was there, hiring a product designer, like product design at Meta meant almost equal proficiencies in interaction design, visual design, and strategy. So like product management. And so if you had those three, they would never hire someone who is just an amazing UX designer who didn't have the visual craft. Like you really needed strong proficiencies in those three areas. As someone who's starting their career, I would think about how you can become extremely balanced in your domain. So whether that means learning, tools to do your prototyping or code, design, like just thinking about how you can compete and be a balanced asset to a company. And also carving out time, I guess, to stay on top of all of the new tools that are coming, because if you're not using those tools, like will fall in. So just, I guess, carving out a bit of time for personal and professional development all the time. Because even if you just graduated from university, like there are just new tools coming to the scene like all the time, right? So you just want to make sure, I guess, you're carving out some development so that you can stay on top of those things. But yeah, it's tricky. I think at the end of the day, even extremely senior people who are seasoned in their careers are, it's not uncommon for them to be ghosted and feel like that their experience isn't valued in this market. And that feeling is really, really hard, especially if you've already experienced success in your field. And I know that up and coming folks are also feeling that, right? Because they're not even getting the chance. But back to networking, I really think that that's the best way to get your nuanced experience and your potential across, because just a resume alone, unfortunately, won't do it. And just applying through traditional job boards also won't do it, because you're one of many thousands. So instead of dedicating X number of hours a day to apply for jobs through traditional portals, I would dedicate a greater portion of that time to networking, both digitally or in person, and connect with people who are at companies that you admire or that you would like to work for. See if they'd be open to just exploratory chat coffee, virtual coffee. I think you got to just get really scrappy. and network. Really, that's the best way.
This is great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. This is great advice for everybody. I love learning more about you and your journey. So thank you so.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. And I don't know if any of your followers want to add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat and share more insights into my own career journey or what it was like hiring at companies like Meta and the creative group before this.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Bye, Rebecca.
Okay, bye.
Sastra Coach.